How are you tonight, all you brilliant awakening wonders? Well, this is a latest message from one of the only people in Congress who cares about this important subject.
It's going to take somebody at the executive level to do it, or there's going to be a incredible leak somewhere that somebody's conscience, and they don't end up, committing suicide by 12 bullet holes to the back of the head kind of thing. It's going to.
Interesting. So he's referring to UFO disclosure and what it's going to take to get the government files to come out on this, and how, just how hidden those are within the government. We're going to talk about tonight and really dive into deep on that, and just get into all this stuff. So one of the most important things, if we want to go back to all this, so I'm just trying to make a whole list of some of the important topics when we talk about crash retrieval programs. We have the Wilson docks, of course. That was a major thing with Eric W. Davis and Hal Puthoff, and those are two scientists who did a lot of research for the government on anti-gravity, inertia, polarizable vacuum, ways around Einstein's relativity, warp drives. Eric Davis authored a number of defense intelligence reference documents, so he had the kind of clearances to maybe have been introduced or briefed on this stuff, and he's made some interesting comments about that and his work on that. So that's someone alive today that could testify about this stuff. We have some interesting links about the research that has been done, just to give some people some history and background. Holloman Air Force Base has been associated with two major projects, three major projects, actually. Project Moondust, Project Blue Fly, and Project Round Robin. And those projects were related to crash retrieval programs, supposedly for Russian Cold War space and missile technology. So, and when the Russians were sending stuff to place, they wanted to recover any kind of Soviet hardware that might have burned up on reentry. So there was a lot of efforts to track incoming space debris, track meteorites or things that came from space and hit the ground, and also recover hardware from those. So recovery teams. So three-part process, and then so this is important history, and that all happened out of Holloman Air Force Base, which is in New Mexico, right near White Sands. Now, as you recall, in the history report I did before, White Sands was semi-involved in some potentially looking at some of the Roswell debris. This was Captain Robert B. McLaughlin from the U.S. Navy, and he said that he brought a piece of this memory foil to Holloman Air Force Base machine shop lab and tried to get one of their top machinists to cut through it with a titanium bit, and it actually dulled out and burned out the bit. They were not able to cut through this material. Whatever it was on the quantum level was just defeating our best metallurgy at the time. So very interesting stuff there. With the subject of metallurgy, also, Battelle Memorial Institute comes up because Battelle was the key metallurgists at the time of Roswell. They've been a defense contractor who has had an integral part of the UFO file. They're some of the top metallurgists and tank armor. A lot of this stuff was developed at Battelle, and they're one of these top contractors for this type of stuff. And Battelle comes up. They currently manage all of our national labs. They have contracts for that. And this is actually something that I wanted to bring up to my congressman, David Cicilline, here in Rhode Island. David Cicilline is actually head of the antitrust. If you look up antitrust, so there's part of actual Congress that's has this antitrust hearings on monopolies, and they talk about monopolies and how to break those up. And I'd like to talk to David Cicilline and see what he has to say about these monopolies. When you look at Battelle Memorial Institute, and it certainly looks like they have a monopoly over our national laboratory management and over our scientific, top technical and scientific institutions, which poses a conflict of interest. And it's a massive establishment that can basically stifle free energy invention, anti-gravity invention, any kind of technology that's developed by our top scientists working with government funding at our top labs is all managed by the same company, which has a history of a super history of buying out patents and being able to cover up technologies for national security reasons or national security purposes, or export control laws over technology, division of the U.S. Air Force, and the laws that apply to those types of things. So this is all something that should be looked at in terms of the military-industrial complex connection to the UFO file and just how far back it goes. The Invention Secrecy Act, enacted 1952. That's the same year that Project Blue Book was started. And so there is this, the most important thing that I found in my 20 years of research as a scientist into the UFO file is probably this Pinnacle memorandum. It's one of the most mysterious, but also I think one of the most important pieces of evidence I've ever come across. So J. Allen Hynek was the scientist that the government hired, U.S. Air Force hired to head Project Blue Book, and he ran Project Blue Book for years, and this file was found in his notes, and included a copy of this here so people can go and check this out. And let's see about this. The Pinnacle Memorandum here, 1953 January, is when the memorandum is actually titled. And only one of these names, or two of these names, I think A.D. Westerman is another Battelle guy. These two are Battelle guys. I'm not sure about B.D. Thomas. But Edward J. Reippal, who's the head, this is said to Miles E. Gall and Edward J. Reippal, which are the two of the top guys over at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at the time, on the project. Edward J. Reippal, of course, headed the Project Blue Book study. He was one of the top researchers and was also a director of Project Grudge as well. So he was a super investigator and had some interesting things to say about the government higher-ups and how they handled and managed the investigation and what they told him to say and what not to say, and his final reporting versus what they were actually learning and trying to figure out. But I think it's interesting to note that of all the names on this, there are a couple that we haven't really decoded or figured out, and they might have been changed. Not sure, because some people think this is Reippal might be Papa Reidal, right? That's one of the few that I have potentially identified as Papa Reidal. There's a guy named Walter Reidal, but his name's Walter J.H. Papa Reidal. And he was a German, paperclip guy. He was an Operation Paperclip guy. So he's the only guy that's I don't know. This more time needs to be spent with this name list. And it's interesting that they give everyone's first two initials and then their last name, but they don't give any first names. So, which makes it even harder to really track these people down, especially this is really stretching the pre-internet documentation days, like where everything was paper and stuff might have been filed away that's never been scanned or never been entered into. It's just sitting in a file cabinet, or the files may have long, been destroyed or burnt down, or who knows. So this is interesting, and I think it's something that investigators, if someone's maybe could file some FOIAs to try to get related information on these names in relation to Project Blue Book or Battelle, or I was thinking potentially other private industry that these people might have been involved in. If they sent a copy of this memorandum to Battelle, they might have sent it to some of the other contractors who are deeply involved with this or the research into this. But it's again interesting. But then we find that the later in after 53, so sometime around 50, maybe 55, 56, I think it is, we have the Do-It letter to Bonson Labs. I want to find where that was, because I have that trying to find this letter, the original copy of it, but there's a number of letters that I had about these Dean Rickles. So I'm trying to find this right now. I can't find it. I'm sorry for not having this more prepared, because I this is like a side tangent, and now I'm opening more tabs on stuff that I don't know what they are. But yeah, there is an important thing. I'm trying to just fill in the gaps, because Bonson put it in his fourth memorandum, June. 56. So 56, about 3 years after this Pinnacle memorandum is issued. 3 years later, we have Bryce and Cecil Do-It, who are from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and they are running a secret college. Okay, Bryce and Cecil Do-It. No, these are not them. There we are. These guys are at University in North Carolina, Chapel Hill. They're very intelligent physicists who are very, very well versed in advanced physics and theoretical physics and whatnot. And turns out that Do-It gets involved with this UFO research. He's one of the physicists who's involved in this. And in 1956, they pretty much get started. They get interested. They get introduced. That they get some funding, some interest in. So Thomas Townsend Brown, right around this time, if people know who that is, Thomas Townsend Brown was. He had linked up with an air conditioning manufacturer from North Carolina, the guy named Andrew Bonson, who ran an air conditioning company. And Andrew Bonson became interested in Brown's work. Brown had tried to go to the U.S. Air Force and in the U.S. Navy and the military for years throughout the 40s and 50s. Trying to get people in they're interested in his research. But because of his high profile and loud mouth and everything, and the paper trail, they were worried about him. So they never recruited him into or gave him the clearance. and inducted him into programs. Instead, what they did is told him that his ideas were stupid, they made no sense, that they weren't interested. Go take a hike, and you're crazy. And then what they went and did is they hired their own scientists, military people, to really look into this and study it. And it turns out that 1947, that's when they broke the sound barrier. They actually used Biefeld-Brown effect type nose cones. They charged the nose cone of the X1, of Chuck Yeager's X1, so that it could create a bow shock reduction of the bow shock on the front of the craft, so that they could break the sound barrier. And they did that with Biefeld-Brown effect, electrohydrodynamics, essentially, where they plasmacized the field with a high voltage out in front of the craft. And that reduces the bow shock, so that they can, go through that sonic boom and break that sound barrier without ripping the plane apart from the boom, So very interesting stuff, but that's how the Air Force does it, man. They tell you you're crazy, and then and they tell you to go take a hike, and then they go and hire their own scientists to study your stuff in the background. But back to Brown's relationship. So Brown gets hired by this Andrew Bonson of Bonson Labs, and maybe not this guy. I don't think this is the guy. But Andrew Bonson, anyway, of Bonson Labs, starts funding Brown's research, and you can find that archival footage here. Some of it. And in some of this footage, you can actually see Bryce and Cecil DeWitt come to the lab and come visit. And I have some pictures of that as well, saved separate, so I can show. But yeah, Bryce and Cecil DeWitt, these two top scientists, did go visit Bonson Labs and did go and take part in some of that research. And then, interestingly, what happened is that in 1957, they hosted this University of Chapel Hill, North Carolina, hosted this super secret anti-gravity conference. And they invited none other than Richard Feynman under the name Mr. Smith, which I thought was, amazing that, actually got down this back. I had known about Bryce DeWitt, and I knew that him and Richard Feynman's doctoral advisor, a guy named John Archibald Wheeler and DeWitt were actually published tons of stuff throughout the 50s and 60s, especially in regards to, group theory, early quantum gravity, and general relativity. So, the Wheeler is just a massive. He's a whale of knowledge, and he was one of the top metallurgists. He was actually more knowledgeable about metallurgy than most of the metallurgists at Battelle, and so he would be recruited for certain Battelle missions for metallurgy physics and knowledge, including the proper metallurgy for preparing the Manhattan Project's nuclear reactor cores, which were at the Hanford site. But the problem is that Wheeler didn't like to travel, and he never wanted to leave Princeton, where he was a professor, and he never wanted to leave there. So they would have to bring everything to Princeton for Wheeler to look at. And Wheeler was haphazard, and he especially didn't like traveling. After he one time he left H-bomb secrets on a train, so he had helped develop the H-bomb and had all his notes in a suitcase that somehow he had forgotten and left on a train. Luckily, they were able to later find and recover that, but they just hadn't known if anyone got a hold of the documents or looked at it in the meantime, and they were all paranoid about it, and he was just super paranoid about even traveling at all after that incident. Very interesting stories about these guys and their history. the fact that his top student, Richard Feynman, who had worked on the Manhattan Project and possessed one of the top security clearances out there, would go to this secret anti-gravity conference at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And I relearned about this a little bit through Eric Weinstein, through some of the connections that he was making to the deeper physics of the UFO stuff, and it's made me revisit a lot of these people's work and really try to dive into their extensive bibliographies and curriculum vitae. So definitely worth the time to take a semester or two of advanced study on some of these subjects once you've had the proper background physics on a lot of this stuff. But yeah, Wheeler and Dewitt go from 57, where they have the secret conference. That's the one of a kind thing. I don't think there was anything. There was a couple more of these kind of similar conferences. There was another one in 57 in Copenhagen later in the year. This one, the one in Chapel Hill, was in January. So they had another one in 63 with where Penrose was a young boy in the picture, Roger Penrose. So a lot of these people have been, central to this whole schools of thought or learned from one another and pass this knowledge down to present day. And Penrose is, of course, he's just an absolute genius, one of the smartest people we have with us today, currently. But back to Wheeler, and then this anti-gravity conference. The other guy was Herman Bondi, which I thought was really interesting. That this guy went on to be the European Space Agency director. NASA for Europe, and he was the director, and he was at this whole conference in 57. Man, really interesting stuff. I bet you there's more to it. I know there's more to it, and I hope Eric comes out with that at some point, and I hope he does it on my channel with me. That'd be great to do a deep dive into this and really, do it right. But anyways, this whole relation to crash retrievals is that these would be the scientists that would have been able to look at this stuff and think about it and theorize on it. And what's interesting is to look at some of their papers at the time. And then you go through all the scientists that I mentioned in my report. We have Edward Mills Purcell discovering that nuclear magnetic resonance effect in 46, the year before Roswell. And then him going on to head the Area 51's Project Rainbow in the 1950s. A decade later, he was hired by the CIA to head this whole investigation into how to reduce radar cross sections signatures for aircraft. And boats. So all this stuff is very much related to physics and physics research that's provable and replicable in the laboratory, including these invisibility cloaks like the ones made by Dr. Nathan Cohen of fractantenna.com. Then you have the Fred Dunham story of the burn pits, where they burned all the paint that was used as the radar absorbent paint for the stealth airplanes back in the 80s and 90s. And they burned it all and got poisoned by it. But there's more advanced types of crude metamaterials, which are even better at hiding electromagnetic response and signatures and back EMF radiation. They've been used for acoustics and creating these quiet rooms for super sensitive experimentation, or testing microphones for absolute quietness. Then you have acoustic chiral metamaterials, like the seashell has that spiral, creates that chiral metamaterial effect, and also the inner ear, which it allows you to hear and allows your brain to separate all the different frequencies that you hear into different, different signals depending on frequency, that so that you can, analyze the actual sound. It's all done by a chiral metamaterial called the cochlea in the inner ear. So John Pendry coined the term metamaterials, but they were first theorized in the late 1970s, 60s, I believe, even 70s, by Victor Veselago, now deceased, God bless him. We talk about tank armor, like active adaptive camouflage, like the kind developed by BAE Systems, where they can make a tank look like a SUV with the thermal signature by changing these thermal adaptive panels. Pretty cool stuff. There's also, bending light with mirage effect. You could take carbon nanotubes. If you heat them up if you run electricity through a bunch of carbon nanotubes, they can heat up really hot. So it reaches thousands of degrees very quickly, but at just a very small surface area, so you can get actually this Flying Dutchman or temperature inversion mirage effect on the surface of these nanowires by just running some voltage through them. They heat up really hot, and you get enough of a temperature gradient to bend the light and make yourself disappear with this cloak. So that's interesting and dangerous at the same time. But then you have technologies like this that use entangled pairs of photons, and they're able to see right through that. It's called quantum illumination, and they can see right through these invisibility cloaks. So, every step we take, there's another counter step. But back to the scientists, I want to talk about, we talked about Bryce and Cecil DeWitt. Here's this was 56. Yeah. So 56 was right about the time when the Air Force was becoming interested in the work and the research that was done by Bunsen Labs with Thomas Townsend Brown. And they also began funding Bryce DeWitt's research into gravity and gravity control, including, he wrote a paper on gravitic drag of rotating superconductors, gravitational drag and rotating superconductors, I believe is the name of the paper, which I thought that was super interesting because that's related to all the Podkletnov research and the Podkletnov effect stuff. And yeah, here's the picture of Cecil and Bryce DeWitt. That's, I believe, Bryce DeWitt right there. And that's his wife, Cecil, with his lab assistant here. In any case, Brown, William Lear is in the video. I mentioned that X1, the nose cone, they use a primitive version of this technology. They're able to up the voltage on this and actually supercavitate the air. And it creates these air spikes for laminar flow where you can, basically they shine this laser and it burns out the air and supercavitates it in front of the craft. So you don't need you don't need the nose. You need a laser instead of a sharp nose spike, and the laser creates this supercavitating effect for you, which allows you to supercavitate the air for supersonic flow and laminar flow. And this was postulated by Arthur Kantrowitz in his Kantrowitz limit. NASA technical papers, yes. So there's all these papers on all this stuff when NASA realized that, hey, this is the future. This is the way to go, laser light craft. You can see these my whole presentation of this stuff on Tim and Show in APEC. If you go to altpropulsion.com, you can find and search for my name. You can find my UAP technical presentation, and this is I go over a lot of this stuff, but some of that stuff I didn't have time to go over in deep detail, so I can go over it here, and I've gone over it in previous videos, but I'd be happy to dive into it further and go into it in as much detail as people want if they want to jump on and ask questions and stuff. But we have the 1950s right around that same time, right? This is 1956, Young Men magazine, and it says the G engines are coming. By far the most potent source of energy is gravity. Using it will power future aircraft will attain the speed of light. Yeah, so they had all these ideas about gravity shielding and absorbers and redirectors, and lots of scientists were experimenting in the 1950s on this. Not just Bunsen Labs and Thomas Townsend Brown. There were a number of other people, including Otis Carr, the famous techno scammer. He had no real theory, no real physics training or background, but he had this idea for gyroscopes, because of it's the same obsession that Eric Lathwaite had later. The gyroscopic propulsion. Sandy Kidd, Veritasium did a video on this, which people should go check out. Eric Lathwaite invented the maglev in 1962, but he was obsessed with this idea of anti-gravity using, rotating gyroscopes. But if we know from Mike Gamble's research, Mike Gamble presented at APEC, the Alt Propulsion Conference, and he did some real serious gyroscope building and research for Boeing aircraft, and he is the foremost expert on this. And go watch his presentations and dive into his stuff on this, and look at his research, because it's well documented. What Boeing aerospace companies did with regards to really putting this myth of gyroscopic anti-gravity propulsion to bed and to rest. But again, to get into the 1960s, there was an event in 1965, a crash of this Acorn type craft that people said this was the shape of it, and it had these weird symbols and drawings on it, but the military was there to recover it and whisk it away within no time. And I'd be curious, man, if you were designing and imagine like you're testing and building test type prototype craft for the military. Would you put like weird hieroglyphics, like alien symbols on the side of it just to throw people off if the thing ever crashed, or is that something you would do, or is that, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it. I don't know, it seems just kind of funky. So also, end of the 1950s, 1959, we had a guy named Frederick Alzafan who had this sort of wacky idea, based on Edward Mills Purcell's discoveries of nuclear magnetic resonance of atoms, and what we were learning about, spinning atoms and spin up and spin down, and the alignments that we could do with resonance and precession in atoms. He had this theory that, hey, what if gravity's, all these random interactions just adding up and creating this sort of field? And what if we were to order everything? Would that maybe somehow get rid of gravity? If we could order, all the spins and flip them all the same direction, or, so he made this whole suggestion of using, this Coulomb type fields to to test anti-gravity, theories, or test, just put gravity to the test and test the limits of it. And he wrote this in Advanced Astronautical Sciences, and he sent a number of requests. You can find his whole story. We actually interviewed his son David Alzafan on my channel, and I have an interview that I did with him, and we have also Tim Ventura has one, as well as him presenting on APEC. If people are interested in this whole story and going down just one rabbit hole of anti-gravity research that we've covered on this channel, but it goes into all the way to 1994, where they were still experimenting with this type of stuff. This is a Boeing report where Boeing was interested and did a study into the Alzafan and did some tests on it in the 1980s. I think this was 81. So he tried for 20 years to get people to pay attention and look into this, and really refined his theories a lot before they did this Alzafan study for Boeing. And this one, apparently the results of it are still classified. They can neither confirm nor deny whether they got any kind of interesting results from this. So I thought that was super interesting. Of course, you get into the physics of these quantum spins. You get spin Hall effect, quantum spin Hall effect. You get topological insulators, Majorana fermions, Dirac materials, cold atom systems, chiral magnetics, spin orbit torque, spin orbit qubits, and spin transistors. So the two most interesting here three most interesting, I'd say, are spin orbit qubits, which are what you can use for quantum computing. And it's I think these spin orbit qubits are a much easier way to achieve your quantum, to reduce quantum losses without all the expensive supercooling the thing. And if we use photonics and new age materials, I think it's going to be much easier to build quantum computers in the future using metamaterials and quasi-crystals. The other one is topological insulators, and of course Dirac materials are probably my, if I had to do three on here. And topological insulators are super cool because you can build systems which recycle or trap heat, so you can minimize your heat losses in your system. So if you want to build a generator or a craft that's super efficient and is, as Bob Lazar described in those early interviews, systems that feed into themselves and other systems. If you want everything to be perfectly engineered on the nano level, you need to have topological insulators built into your walls and your surroundings and boxes, your boxes that you put everything in. In your build out. So yeah, topological insulators are super important for a whole number of reasons, and it's also for building conductive surfaces, because some of these topological insulators are programmable, so they can be shut off, so they can be non-topological, so you can make a switch out of that, and those switches would be key in again, when applied to this spin orbit qubits and quantum computers, because you need ways to switch these things and change them out if you're going to build your quantum computer infrastructure on a spin orbit qubit type system. You're going to need these types of switches to bring bits and information in and out of that computer. Then lastly, these Dirac materials, which, man, I should put a whole nother I should put a whole nother thing in here on Dirac cones and then light squeezing. Explain this a little bit better with these Dirac cones, because what you can have is in these surfaces. I talk about these, the surfaces of these craft, which, by the way, that magnesium bismuth metamaterial. We were talking about this last night and talking about how it's supposedly, it's a Bragg reflector, which, multiply is a 30 times frequency multiplier. And that 30 somehow, it kind of is interesting that the number 30 corresponds to the ratio of the magnesium to the bismuth layers in that UFO metamaterial. That sample, which, by the way, Gary Nolan has a piece of this, and I've been in discussion with Gary Nolan, and I said, hey, if I can get the team together to build a terahertz generator that we can pump, some wattage out. I have a Faraday cage, and I have a lab with enough power to do this experiment. Would you be willing, to come out here with your piece of material and run some tests and experiments in the lab with us? And he seemed to like this idea, and said he would agree if why wouldn't he, for the name of science, if we could put in the effort to. One of the biggest problems they said with this is the whole reason for that U.S. Army CRADA, supposedly, so that TTSA came out and said that they had a piece of a spacecraft, and then they had this Adams project, which To the Stars Academy had the Adams project, which I had in the headline of this video, right? Thank you, because we go into this seriously, and nobody else does, dude. There's no other channels that dive into this, right? So the U.S. Army CRADA supposedly. All right, let's back up before they get into the U.S. Army and then give this material to the U.S. Army. What happened was Lou Elizondo with TTSA started this Adams project, and the Adams project. Where is the? I had the page on this open. And the Adams project was this. Supposedly, they were looking for pieces of UFOs, right? And they wanted. That's TTSA. So they wanted people. Yeah, the Adam Research Project. Here it is, right? So they wanted people to send their UFO parts or any kind of artifacts from UFOs to TTSA, to Lou Elizondo. So Lou Elizondo, went cross country and picked up all these, met people and, talked to people and got their stories and got all these pieces. And then we never heard about this really again. I mean, it wasn't promoted. They didn't really dive into, hey, we talked to this person. This was the story we got, and we got this piece of material, and this is what we're doing with it. We're going to run the tests on it. We're going to give it to this lab, or we're going to do this. We're going to do that. They said some very specific things, as you recall. Tom DeLonge went on Joe Rogan and said that they had this material that was part of the ship's hull, and it was part of it was recovered from Roswell, and it was part of the ship's actual hull, and it was part of the propulsion system. That the propulsion system of this craft is on the surface of the ship, and that what they do is, he said this on Joe Rogan. Tom DeLonge said that, hey, we shine terahertz frequency at this thing and it floats. And, Joe Rogan's like, huh? Like, what does that even mean? What's a terahertz? And it's like, Tom DeLonge said, fuck do I know? I'm not a physicist. And man, it was kind of embarrassing, but it was also revealing, because it was like Tom didn't talk about that anymore. And like, it was like they brought that out, but then they quickly pulled that back. But they also danced out this whole idea that, hey, we're getting pieces, and they'll also get this Adams project where we're collecting more pieces for analysis, right? So everybody sent the Adams project. Everyone sent, this counterintelligence agent, Lou Elizondo. I mean, former counterintelligence officer, Lou Elizondo, right? Who, no background, no established, trust. Just a guy said, I want to come out and blow the whistle on these programs that I was involved in. I was director of this ATIP program, which, ATIP program. Get into Greenstreet's reporting on that and his breakdown of the whole thing, because it's really quite remarkable that people would send all their UFO material to Lou Elizondo under this Adams project. Then it would shut down, and we'd essentially hear nothing more of this Adam research project. But then what happened is this U.S. Army CRADA with TTSA is that they took all the pieces that they recovered, that everybody was kind enough to send in to them for disclosure purposes, and they went and handed all that over to the U.S. Army and to this CRADA. And the reason that the reason that they gave for this, Linda Bolton Howe and Hal Puthoff said, is that, the U.S. Army is the only one who has the lab and the terahertz facilities and the power to power this thing. So they couldn't find any other labs that do terahertz research that would be interested in building, a test rig to blast this thing with, the right terahertz. Apparently it's in this terahertz gap. So it's in 1 to 10 terahertz is the range. And we see up here in the visible spectrums as an order of magnitude a little bit higher than that terahertz band where there's the terahertz gap exists. There's actually a gap in the electromagnetic spectrum that we can't really see in or see beyond. There's some resolution problem in this, and below it you have electronics, and above it you have photonics. But there's this gap where photonics and electronics meet, and it's this terahertz gap. And apparently can't see things in there very well for whatever reason. I think it's because it has to do with the resonant structure of the atom itself, and that might be where gravity lies, which may be why, this might be a way to turn it off or turn it on, if there's some truth to this. But alas, we'll never know, because it went into a black hole of, the government. Whereas if it was still out there in the public, I would argue that, we could still do something with it. So I was more than elated when I learned that, hey, they didn't give it all up to the U.S. government. They gave only a couple pieces of this to them to try. But hey, they still got some pieces of it. These scientists actually still have pieces of it. So I was relieved. We're going to try and build this terahertz generator and prove Linda Bolton Howe and Tom DeLonge and Hal Puthoff and all these other guys wrong, who said that, the only people who could do it is the U.S. Army. So we have to, give it to them. But in reality, there's a terahertz and ultra-fast photonics lab at Wright State University, right next to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Literally, right there. Wright-Patterson, and this is these guys have the tape capability. Why? Let's call them up and say, hey, man, I got some alien metamaterial here. Might be from the Roswell craft, and we might be able to crack their propulsion system if you guys can build something that can blast a couple watts of 1 to 9 terahertz variably at this thing. Can we try it out? Can I get an amen on that idea? Does it sound like a good idea? Yeah, man. We got people out in Dayton right now. I'll go stay at ME's house, man. I'll go fly out there tomorrow and with buy Gary Nolan a ticket if he wants to go, man. Let's get this done. This should get done. It needs to be done. Any comments or questions from the audience? Please post them. I'm gonna start. I've been reading all the comments that people leave on the videos and try to respond to any questions that people have with links and sources and stuff. Yeah, jump on the stream, dude. If you want, I'm down. I'm down. I went over pretty much all the key stuff that I wanted to cover, other than, oh yeah, one more thing that I wanted to cover with regards to this crash retrieval programs and whatnot, right? So the UFO material might be under some, quasi-governmental organizations. We talked about these quasi-governmental organizations. It's Battelle, where they manage all their national labs, but they're a private nonprofit organization, and it's not government, but it's quasi-government, so they can hide the secrets in these organizations, and they won't have to respond to FOIA the same way that the CIA or a government agency might, which I thought is super interesting. But did you know about GEC Marconi? So this GEC Marconi company was founded in 20th of July, 1897 as the Marconi Company. Now, Marconi was the guy who sent the first transatlantic wireless signal. He had set up some radar towers right out here in Cape Cod, right on the end of Wellfleet, at a place called Marconi Beach. And it's called Marconi Beach because the towers where he sent his wireless signal from, this Marconi wireless station, are still out there. You can like go out. You can go out to the tip of Cape Cod and find the plaque where the radio tower station was, where Marconi's wireless transmitters sent the first transatlantic wireless signal, and they were able to receive it across the Atlantic Ocean. And the way they had to do this was the process of it, right? So people commented, well, that's proof the Earth's flat, because how do you send it over the ocean when you can't see England, right? It's over the horizon. So this actually is part of something called over the horizon radar, right? Over the horizon radar. And OTH radar is just another proof against flat Earth, the idea of flat Earth, that why would you need OTH radar if there was no curvature? So, yeah, there's a lot of systems that they've developed for this over-the-horizon radar transmission, and also HAARP is a way to create storms in the ionosphere, which wipe out the capability of these over OTH radar systems. So, HAARP was actually developed in part as a weapons system against OTH radar, so they could create enough noise and storminess in that upper atmosphere that they could, block out or jam signals from being transmitted over the horizon. Oh, we got some folks in the house. What is going on, Grandmaster? What you got? Are you anti-gravitizing?
Yo. Yeah, it's the electrogravitomagnetic kinetic digital magnetic levitation module saucer.
Oh, amazing. Sweet. Freaking magnets. How do they work? So
it's like 4 electromagnets. Here I have a.
Back to this Marconi company, dude. Did you know? So Marconi would have been one of these top technology companies. They would have been the ones to have the radar and radio wave test equipment and all that kind of stuff back in the day. They were one of the few. So naturally, if they had some kind of crazy technology where they were trying to figure out what it was and who the top people, in the industry were in terms of electronics or, technology wise, Marconi would have been a good choice, right? This Marconi company would have been, would have been a good choice, man. It's, just like Battelle, just like if you had some metals from a craft and you were trying to figure out what the metals were, you'd give it to Battelle. And it's interesting that Battelle did those studies in, the late 1940s on titanium alloys and how to, take them apart and analyze their components and what they're made out of and whatnot. So I thought that was pretty amazing. What else is going on? The Tim Burchett. We got to get Tim Burchett on the, and some of these other congressmen. We got to get them educated somehow. But I'm feeling that, I'm just worried that they might be bought out or just part of the problem. How can we get these guys to come through and fix this and bring disclosure for us? Kind of how can we convince the government what's in it for them? There's a lot of fear involved with bringing all this out. Hey, Sebastian's in the room, man. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on, Jeremy? I'm just kicking it. Come to say hi. Wanted to share just an interesting sim that I put together a week ago or something when I was playing around with equations that are related to toroids, and found an interesting effect when I essentially applied those equations in a simulation that essentially applies a gravitational force to a set of particles that collapses them down into essentially toroidal movement. And what happens at the end, though, is really fascinating to me, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happens there, which is essentially all of the particles will cohere into essentially what appears to me it looks like almost like a longitudinal wave, and I'm just trying to figure out what that's all about right now. And I just thought it'd be interesting to share with you and Jeremiah in case it meant anything to you. But yeah.
Yeah, you want to share your screen, man?
Yeah, sure. I
check that out.
Yeah, let me pull it up. Just one moment. And here we go.
Oh, by the way, that new Corbell thing, we're going to do an experiment. I'm going to buy a couple of these. These are 36-inch silver party balloons. And the one looks like there's some reflection in there from the video, so this might not work. I might need Mylar, not latex.
Are you seeing my screen at all?
Yeah, I'll share yours, but I'm gonna buy some of these balloons and see if I can make that a UFO that looks like those spheres. I don't know. Maybe it's a waste of time, but again, it's not a waste of time. Jeremy Corbell's out here getting 3,000. He got 500,000 views on that post on his post on Twitter.
For what?
About the stupid Mosul UFO or whatever.
That's wild.
The sphere that was filmed over Iraq by the military apparently in 2016, and it was just released in so the Pentagon has this fake report and investigation, this cover up that they're running into UFOs right now, and they just released some new thing. But who's the person that gets to bring it out to the public and get all the media attention and press for it? It's Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. Just explain that one to me. I don't know. I'm sorry. I digress. Why don't you show me something important rather than just...
Yeah, I'll just show you something interesting, at least. If you can see my screen here, I'll reset the simulation. Basically, all this is a simulation of particles that are arranged, like evenly and periodically, and just collapse down into the center of the simulation using essentially gravity. But the way that the particles themselves are moving is essentially prescribed by a set of equations that are the equations for toroidal motion. But watch what happens at the end of this, which is the part that I like. I've never seen anything like this in any simulation that I built, where essentially the simulation just settles down into one state, but then does this.
Whoa.
So I don't know what the hell is going on there, but I'm trying to figure it out because I don't understand the mathematics here at all.
This almost looks like the collapse. You have when you have it in an atom, right, is you have this excited state, And then when the excited state drops down, it produces a photon.
Yeah.
And the first question that Feynman's father asked him when he got his PhD out of Princeton under John Archibald Wheeler, his father asked him, where does the photon come from? And Feynman could not answer. But this certainly looks like a photon being emitted from an atom.
That's exactly what it looks like to me. And it also looks like an eye perceiving that particular photon, which I found so interesting. So I zoomed out a little bit so you can kind of see what happens here to the to whatever is going on here. But just the way that this structure is playing out here, this does look like I need to research this more, because there's something here that is at least really interesting to me, because I've never seen any of my sims do this before, right? This is completely new to me. And I know there's something here, like, just because I know that there's something fundamental about toroidal motion, just because it's reflected everywhere I see it, everywhere I look, right? It's a fundamental motion of everything, really. So I thought you'd get a kick out of this. I emailed it to you as well, and Jeremiah, just because there might be something here for Jeremiah also, just to take a look at.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what software this is, and show us a little bit more about what you did to make this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, essentially, this is a really simple program that follows a really simple equation, which is right here. Let me find the equation that I'm using. Really, it's basically the equation for a toroid, right? This particular equation, if mapped out, results in creating a torus. And so essentially what I'm doing is I'm applying that motion to the particles that I have in the simulation. Basically what it is it's a sim that places I think I've got 360 particles that are arranged evenly on the outside here. And then I just apply gravitational force, essentially a mutual attraction to all the particles. And the particles always collapse down in a particular way, in the way that you saw, well, them do. And there's particular movements that they always seem to make. And it always results in this emission of what looks like a photon, right? And so if this is in fact, any kind of model for this, for the emission of a photon, I thought it'd be interesting to share, in case there was somebody else out there who was, doing this kind of work, because I need to understand this better. In any case, what's remarkable to me is just how much it looks like an eye too. It looks like an eye. It does what an eye does. And it also radiates light. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it radiates the fields. So these are, if you look at these as fields, exactly, and we're to break this down into fields, then what you have is radiation there.
Yes,
you have field collapsing, and then radiating, and that's
it's interesting. To me, it's interesting how it collapses down into this caduceus like a structure, right? Which is this very much a kind of a double helix like structure, or like it looks like a caduceus to me. And so I see this structure repeated everywhere too. This kind of this again. It seems like there are like three fundamental elements that comprise this particular structure, even though there's a
so you have a diameter of this circle here, the original sphere, the outer limit of that, right?
Yeah.
What's the ratio of that diameter to the wavelength of that emitted field?
Right now that particular ratio is controlled by this set of numbers here, where I can change, for example, I can change the ratio.
I can't see what you're looking at, man. I don't know if you need to change.
Yeah, let me just change it over here so you can see that. My apologies. Let me share my screen. It's gonna be Okay, I think you see this one, right? So here, so I've got here on the left is the code that actually implements this, and I wrote this code, and I can change some of these values around so that I can get different effects. Like I can change the speed at which this will collapse down. So here I am increasing that collapse speed so that everything collapses down really quickly. And this is basically just a ratio here where I'm essentially reducing the velocity by a certain amount at every step, right? So I can also make it like I can lengthen the amount of time this takes to collapse such that it, right? So it just takes longer to get to that end state, but it always gets to that same end state. And I just find it interesting what's going on here. I don't know. I have to I've got to take a look at Feynman diagrams. I just have a feeling like there might be some interesting information to glean from there as well. But in any case, it's
well, this seems more like a binary process than, Feynman diagrams is usually, two things splitting into one or two things merging into one or, one thing splitting into two or two things merging into one.
Gotcha.
It's kind of like there's always, in a Feynman diagram has always got 3 points, if you ultimately look at it as information in, information out.
Right. Interesting. Anyways, yeah, I sent you a link to the script, and you're welcome to go and check it out anytime, and share it with people who might understand what's going on here. But yeah, I just found this very interesting.
Yeah, I will post that in the description of the video down below afterwards, so people can go and check that out for sure.
Right on. Yeah,
this U.S. spy plane apparently spotted this possible UFO and took some picture of it. And there's, as this report's being released, these are apparently some of the things that are in it. And it's again, from a seasoned researcher and intelligence and an analyst essentially in this field of being able to go through and find real intelligence and try to sort out nonsense from that and look at a lot of things objectively and even reevaluate known science without the dogma.
What's your
notions? This is obviously nonsense. When I look at this UFO stuff, I just see like it's a distraction. It's a public charade and a distraction. I could just release a bunch of party balloons and people wouldn't learn anything. They're not learning anything. The government's not disclosing or declassifying anything. We're not getting closer to these crash retrieval programs. We're not getting closer to the metallurgists, to the metallurgy, to the science, to the
right. It seems like a whole bunch of disinformation. Like, have you looked into at all what's going on over the skies in Ukraine right now? From what I understand, there's a whole lot of reported UFOs. Of course, it's hard to tell just because of the fog of war and whatever else might be flying above this, above Ukraine. But I find it interesting that there's so many reports coming out of there right now.
Yeah, I've heard that some of the debunkers say different things on that too. But again, there's a lot of stuff flying around over there. It's a war zone, and you got to keep in mind where the defense drone market is at. They got all kinds of advanced drones that are taking out tanks. There's videos of these drones taking out tanks or these craft that are tank killers. And then they got counter stealth invisibility tanks to counter the drones, so the drones can't see them and stuff. So they got this. There's a lot of other stuff that's going on over there that we're not being, really informed of, and it's almost like they're realizing a lot of this other equipment's kind of outdated for some of these, future battlefields, and it's like they're just playing war to destroy some of their old equipment.
That's what it
Can I
seems
show
like.
you guys the UFO that flew over my house?
No?
Nah.
Can I show you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
share the screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Tell me when you're ready. Okay, here we go.
Oh yeah.
What?
Looks like somebody blew up a poncho and
Totally. It's like a flying invisible
He
person.
was just turning to the like clockwise, but I'm like doing this Apple iPhone Live thing where it like bounces it forward and backward.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you kind of like see it from both angles, so I kind of like it like that.
That's wild looking.
Yeah, it looks almost like an acorn. If you look like at an acorn, it looks very similar from one angle at least. And the other angle it's like an elliptical with like a curved electrode on top.
it looks almost like, they took a big 56-gallon drum liner and filled it with helium and then threw like a poncho on it. Like a white rain poncho.
Yeah, it could have been using some neutral buoyant.
That's wild.
Throw a white rain they sell white rain ponchos. I just looked it up. So you get a white rain poncho and then you fill a bag liner, a drum liner.
Oh, there you go. That would work.
I see a drum liner. I just always look at these and I think, like, how could I fake this easily? So these drum liners, they're big bags. You don't get the 6 mil because that's too much plastic. You just get like a 3 mil or 1.5. I don't even know if they have that thin, but yeah, fill one of those babies with your helium, and then let me see that video again. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
There's your flying nun. You know what I mean? I could just see, like,
Yeah.
they got a drum liner in there, a big knot tied in it on the bottom, with maybe even a string on it. Tie some fishing line on it, and something invisible, nice and thin.
Yeah, that would work.
I don't know. Oh, it's their invisibility cloak man is malfunctioning.
It was doing like a controlled spin too as it was flying, like one revolution every 3 seconds. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could do that with like a propeller or something, but it seemed like it was weird exotic propulsion. I don't know.
It doesn't look like any kind of drone I've ever seen. It looks like it's got some kind of, what is that? Like a little.
Oh yeah, helium's run out. You really can't buy it much anymore and stuff. But luckily we have an electrolysis machine. You can just make hydrogen 4 times as light.
It's lighter than helium. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, it's like a Michelin man with a KKK hood on.
Oh shit, man.
Yeah, let's look up some more UFO videos. Let's do some, dude. Let's just.
What's the latest UFO video that's been posted on Reddit? I haven't seen much recently, other than more admissions from
Fear UFO. Someone posted a video that was posted a year ago where someone captured the thing from the side, and it totally looks like a balloon.
Has anybody ever done like a dissection of the videos that came from Turkey, of those long range videos that were taken that looked like they were of the UFO craft with like a couple of grays hanging out in them? Did you ever see those?
Yeah, the classic Turkey.
Oh my God,
UFO.
those are by far my favorite.
Yeah, same.
They're amazing, and they truly look like just 2 grays up in their fucking spaceship. Excuse my language. Like, just it's remarkable. It really is. some people are, have tried to debunk it and say that it's like cruise ships off the water or something, but it looks like aliens to me. It's pretty awesome.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting. That was an interesting story. Like I've always wondered about this one. What was that ball all about? Like it would move by itself, like it would roll towards you, it'd roll away from you by itself. It was really interesting. And the family was offered a bunch of money for it several times, and there's all kinds of stories around this one.
Yeah, dude. You know what I want to start doing? We should start making stuff like this and selling it through the store, because like I'm looking for merchandise, and anytime I see something like this, it's like, dude,
People would do that.
why aren't we like selling Fushigi magic balls and these spheres and so far spheres too? That's another thing that would be easy to make that you could sell.
Yeah.
I wonder what the engineering is on them though. I wonder what, someone can find
So for
someone find me the patent on these. I'd love to find the patent on the SOFAR bomb.
what is that?
So there's a sound channel in the ocean called the SOFAR channel. And if you get to a depth about halfway down in the ocean, where the density anyways in the ocean, there's this is like a resonant channel where the bouncing of the waves off the surface of the ocean and the floor of the ocean are matched. So you get this sort of resonance effect where sound can travel really far. And they discovered it by studying whales, because they were like, why are these whales diving down deep? There's no food down there,
Yeah.
So they put the trackers on these whales to trace them, and they're like, why are they diving down really deep? And they go down and they talk down there. So they're making all their noises and they're talking down deep in the ocean at this certain level. So
That's
what
wild.
they found is that the whales are going down because they discovered this natural resonance channel in the ocean where they can go down to this SOFAR channel, and that they're project their voices to travel over much
Greater distances.
greatest
It's so cool.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, so the fin whales especially, they drive down to this channel many kilometers away. They can communicate and hear one another down in the SOFAR channel. So I thought that was super interesting. But they learned about this channel, and they set up all these detectors. So they put buoys, anchored buoys to the ocean floor with tethers. So that the buoys would sit in the SOFAR channel level, and they could set up monitoring, listening stations, And they set up a whole bunch of them all over the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean as well. And during the World War II, the U.S. Navy had these SOFAR bombs that they would issue to in all like the U.S. naval rescue shit, like all their lifeboats and stuff. They'd put this kit in their life. Inside their life raft would be 3 of these SOFAR balls, and the instructions are if you're stranded at sea and you need to get rescued, the instructions are to drop one of these SOFAR bombs into the water, wait 30 minutes, and then drop the other one, and then wait 30 minutes and drop the last one.
Gotcha.
And that was your instructions. And there was no other instructions other than that. But it would confuse these sailors, because we're like, what the heck are these metal spheres? And why do I drop them in the water if I want to be rescued for my lifeboat? And if they were captured, the enemies were even more confused, because they'd cut into these spheres to figure out what they are, and find it's just a hollow metal ball. And how the SOFAR sphere worked, though, is the hollow metal ball was engineered as a depth charge.
Got it. Yeah. So it collapses at a particular depth.
When it gets down to that SOFAR channel, it crumples.
Right.
When
And it makes a noise. Yeah.
It pops and it makes a noise. So they can hear that, and then they can triangulate the position of these lost sailors, and they can actually go and rescue them.
That's
And
cool.
yeah, this was quite ingenious for the time. It was classified, yeah, in World War II. No longer classified anymore. But it's just it's
That's
still
neat.
one of those things that not a lot of people know about. But
I have never heard of this before. Go figure. That's really cool.
yeah, I thought it was cool, but we could figure out how thick, because there must be a certain gauge they made the metal, knowing its strength.
Right.
And you could, because to fine tune it to the depth of the SOFAR channel.
Right.
There's got to be some kind of science to that as well. And I wonder if that design specification is in the patents, or if it's, you know, some sort of classified trade secret that you have to figure out yourself, or, you know, through experiment.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you can find it somewhere. But anyways, that would be interesting just for you know, experimenting with these sound channels, and also to sell them, you know, to sell them as novelty items to people, because it's not you know, it's
Totally.
one of the few times you can sell bombs and not get, you know, the FBI knocking on your door like United Nuclear, right?
That's true. That's true.
Because there's no explosives.
That's wild. Can you even buy these things? Like, are they something that are purchasable? But
I don't know. Like, I'm sure there's some old ones. Oh, I don't think this is them, but I wonder if because there's rumors about them, but I've never actually seen one or a picture of one, man. And I wonder if there's like some museum where they have them in, you know, or somewhere. There's got to be, right?
NASA lore, it says here that SOFAR bombs were used to track Mercury spacecraft when they would fall into the ocean, apparently, or something. There was here SOFAR device.
Yeah. So yeah, it was also in the Mercury. Yep. So the early space program had used these naval sonar. Yep. So you can read about this. Yeah, they probably teach you this at maritime school. A lot of them probably know about this, about making a SOFAR fix. So here they are. There's their detectors, you know. So they say you have, you know, a detector at A, B, and C, and you get the time signal from this. So detector A hears it at this time.
Yeah.
B hears it at this time. C hears it at that time. So this is how they draw it to be. Basically, you take the first one to hear it is the first radius.
Mm-hmm.
Then looks like the second one to hear it. Then the third. You know, so you can get that SOFAR fix, yeah, and triangulate the position using this math.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah, this is cool. So that's how to get the SOFAR fix on the signal. And yeah, I'll post this in the description as well, man. This is on a maritime site. Yeah, they figure out which direction you're going because you drop 3 of them. So that's what gives them those 3 data points. So they don't just have one. They wouldn't just have one data point P. They'd have P1, P2, and P3. And so they could judge by those, you know, get a fix on not only your position, but your velocity and momentum direction, you know, find out where you're going.
Maglev something.
Find an intercept.
Maglev.
Wow.
Yeah, good stuff.
Who's the guy's name that was working on? There's somebody in, I want to say the Maldives, that's working on some interesting technology. Do you know the guy's name?
That would be Malcolm Bendall.
Malcolm Bendall. Okay.
Right, that's Malcolm Bendall, and you know, I wanted to get him on because he's got these interesting models, but really, if I pointed out, you know, what's up with his models in another show, that you really need to show how to get the table of nuclides, because he's talking about this regular periodic table, right?
Yeah.
And you know, let's see if I can find that graphic. Malcolm Bendall periodic table. So he maps it to this torus or whatever and says, oh, well, it's kind of like a torus or a cone. You know, I'm gonna find it on Twitter because that's where it was. That's where I found it on for. Discard. Let's see, Malcolm Endall.
Oh yeah, we were talking about this the last time, and there was a guy that was talking about like kind of musical scale that was not that was non-commutative.
Yeah, that was Void as Yin Yang. He's really cool. It's a different guy that I had on. I got to get Malcolm on. I'm gonna try to get Malcolm on, and I want to ask him some questions about this because I had posted to him and asked him about this. Yeah, so here's his graphic of the periodic table. And so he kind of has this periodic table, but I, mentioned in my stream anyway, I haven't really talked to him about this. I kind of want to go over some of it, but that you have to understand, you have to account for neutron capture. Your theory has to account for these and the table of nuclides. You need to be able to predict the table of nuclides because it's not just the periodic table you were taught in high school, anymore. When you're getting into theoretical physics, it's something called nuclides, right? So the table of nuclides looks like more like this, each hydrogen only has 3 nuclides, you only got hydrogen, tritium, and deuterium. But when you keep going up, you start getting more and more, and on both sides too. So this chart of the nuclides, it expands pretty quickly, and I think it's an additive process which produces this based on some basic principles similar to the what is it the Rydberg spectra. You have to be able to get the Rydberg formula, right? So if you have a theory on your atomics, it has to account for the the Rydberg formula. It has to account for and it has to account for beta decay. So it has to account for alpha and beta decay and gamma emissions. So that those appear in only certain places on that table of nuclides. And the way this thing's built is this whole these whole T-bars of neutron capture, which kind of set the whole set that whole progression of the table going off. All right. So I don't know. It's a little bit beyond me as something that I want to take on just now. But I just like to, when I see people like this attempt it, I like to say, hey, well, this is some real physics that the community is going to know about that you wouldn't learn if you didn't go to college. You're not going to. People who teach themselves don't always know or find all this stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of the downside of not being classically trained, is having to kind of struggle through a lot of this stuff that comes as par for the course. And
yeah, no, it's good though, because we can look at the conundrums and then be like, oh well, like we had a guy on that was saying that he found a free energy machine, and then Todd Desiato came on and said, I'm an electrical engineer, and this is just a buck boost generator, and you're not actually getting any excess power out of it. You're just converting the frequency, and boom, right there, it was like, okay, we all learned something and we can move on. And
right.
With this is cool. I love people thinking outside the box and try to apply new models and new ideas, but it's
but you do have to produce what we see, essentially. Like any new model is only as good as the data it's producing, right? If it's not spitting out everything we're already used to and then some, then it's not it. It just can't be. So
Yeah, maybe I'm gonna reach out to him and try to get him on and see what he has to say. So I'm definitely interested in that. And so I learned about him through Joe Rogan had that other guy on. I forget the dude's name, and we played that. He was the one that plugged Bendall, who's the guy who's supposedly working in the Maldives on some of this technology and actually building stuff. So definitely looking forward to talk to him and get some scoop on that, and any information that he can share with us. Who's there? There was another guy too, Grant Cameron. Had this dude on recently, right?
Say meow meow.
That's funny.
Like
Was that him? Some of these are better than others. He had. Let's see if it's videos. No. Where's the dude he had? He had this guy on recently on the show. Yeah, it should be recently uploaded.
Meow.
It wasn't James Landoli. Oh, James. He had I don't know where this dude is now. It wasn't a month ago. It was like a week ago. And you got stuff here from 11 months ago and a year ago, man. I want recently uploaded. Must be a different Grant Cameron channel, maybe. Who's the guy?
Grant Cameron is awesome. We had him brief Congress.
Yeah, he's good, man. He's got some good stuff. I would love to get on his show and talk to him, man. I should reach out to him totally. He'd talk to me. I'm trying to find this interview that he did.
Stephen Bassett.
Huh?
You should have Stephen Bassett on.
Yeah, Steve. I've talked to Steve. I've interviewed him a couple times. Just sit down. We did. I ran into him in 2019 out in LA at Alien Con, and I know him from back in the day out in Colorado as well. So
Sweet.
2009. So yeah, Steve and I go way back, and I'm definitely trying to get him on at some point. That might happen. He's in disagreement. He thinks that TTSA is the best thing that's happened to ufology. And he's like, "Oh, they're helping us, and you're fighting them, and you're not being on their side." And I was like, "No, I'm not fighting them. I'm just being skeptical and on the safe side. And I'm trying to tell other people to err with caution. I'm not trying to make conclusions for them or bash these guys or chase them out of ufology, And I would never do that with the scientists. We need more scientists and people bringing scientific disclosure into the field, and that's all I've ever advocated at the heart of it. And I've just advocated real investigations because we want to know the information. We don't want to be sitting here diluting our truth and our message with nonsense. And
I'm skeptical of their metamaterials too. If their magnesium, bismuth, zinc is really a metamaterial or not.
Yeah. Well, it's they could be doing more on teaching people the science about the metamaterials and whatnot. I know he posted this interview on his channel. No, he posted it on his Facebook page because that's where I watched it. So I'm going through his Facebook page now, but I can't find the interview that he did with this dude. Maybe he took it down.
What do you think nitinol was used in the UFO? Do you think it was like a thermoelectric generator? Or you think it was like a part of the hull of the craft? I would imagine like the hull or something. I don't know.
Oh, the nitinol. Well, here's a couple things, right? So a couple things about nitinol, right? I want to show you this. Action Lab recently did a video where they can actually lift weights with memory metal. You know, he makes a spring out of the memory metal.
Yeah, you can harvest that energy too. I heard from small temperature gradients. You have like 55 tons per square inch of force, whatever. And I think they made like nitinol generators. I wonder if that's a ideal way to use like waste heat or something and
yeah,
get
Thoisoy does it here too, where he heats up the spring and it pulls back into shape. And
that's awesome.
Spot. So it could be used as mechanical levers or systems. I think about zero tolerance machining and a door that will open up in the hull and then seal back seamlessly.
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah.
You'd probably use like a nitinol hinge because you could just heat up this memory material and it would open and then close perfectly.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
It's fun to do with. I bought a bunch and experimented with it. It's really wild.
Another thing that's super interesting is at MIT, when I went there to learn about cold fusion, one of the scientists there, is a guy named Dr. Mitchell Schwartz, who I made friends with there, and Mitchell, I talked to recently, just last year, and he said that they were doing research with new types of, because the problem with these a lot of these materials they were using, the cathodes would just burn out at these cold fusion sites because you have these super cavitation effects that occur, and it corrodes and eats away at the metal, similar to the way that supercavitation eats away at ship propellers. So the problem is with these cathodes is getting them to produce long term and stand up long term as a production site for cold fusion, which is undeniably, he claims it's deuterium fusion or deuterium-tritium fusion. And it's muon a lot of muon catalyzation can help a lot. What that is, a muon is like a heavy electron. It's the same as an electron, same charge. It's just heavier. So what happens is because it's heavier, it orbits lower. So if you got two atoms with muons instead of electrons, you swap out the muon, the electrons for the heavier muons. The atoms can get closer together. So there's a more higher probability that a fusion event, tunneling event, could occur. So, and Mitchell's the one that also showed that you have to get to this proper loading ratio of about 94% loading ratio. Anything above that or below that is not optimal, and you won't see cold fusion effects. The MIT study and the Caltech study that supposedly debunked cold fusion didn't even come close to about 80%, where you won't see any effect, according to his research. So he also was very key in illustrating the science behind the falsifiability of cold fusion. And
what's up with the GEAT plasma reactor? Do you think the GEAT plasma reactor was like a similar cold fusion or like low energy nuclear reaction?
It's a legit machine, and that's the only explanation that makes sense within the scope of physical laws. Yeah. I would have to say, and I don't think it's unique. I think that there may be other people that have discovered similar types of ways to do this. But back to the nitinol thing, is Mitchell Schwartz recently told me that he's experimenting with cathodes made of nitinol because they're self-repair.
Oh, wow. Cool.
And so that might be a possibility. As I mentioned in the my Roswell report, that the apparently they did an SEM on that memory material. So the whole thing is, you go back to the studies, right? Let me find it right here with Elroy Center and Battelle. Okay, so Battelle, you got John Elroy Center at Battelle. He's a Battelle scientist that says, hey, 1949, I did this study for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base commissioned by Wright-Patterson for Battelle, and we were given unknown samples of titanium-based alloys, and we were to study the chemical analysis of these samples by using chlorine carbon tetrachloride. So they dissolve these samples in this real high solvent and burn them off, and then measure the off gases to figure out what the heck was in them, right? So Battelle scientist Elroy Center, though, later tells his wife and some friends that he was given some samples while working at Battelle, which he thinks made by us and weren't made by the Russians or the Chinese either. And he thought that they were alien. He was given alien technology and tasked with reverse engineering it and analyzing it. And that's certainly what it looks like in the Battelle report that Center wrote in 1949 for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base on how to analyze these samples. And it's interesting because they also, in the report, this metallurgist Eastwood and Craighead and Fawn did a lot of investigations into different titanium alloys. And one of the ones they spent the most time on was titanium nickel alloys, including the phase diagrams, which show the ratios where this nickel titanium fusion, this magical point is in the alloy where you get these memory metals. And the memory metals, where did they come from? Why were they starting to research memory metals in 49? And they can claim it was, according to the reports, I mean, it's very obscure, so they can claim it was all they were just looking at titanium alloys for use in aircraft hulls. So it's very benign at the surface of it. But when you dig into it, and some of the stories that were told by these people who supposedly worked on this stuff and looked at it, the MJ-12 scientists supposedly, the MJ-12 is, you had Menzel of Harvard and Vannevar Bush of MIT being there.
Vannevar Bush.
They chose. Infamous. Yeah, the infamous Vannevar. But really, there's so many more scientists that would have been better cleared and also have talked about, being privy to some stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Wilbur Smith did an interview with Robert Sarbacher in 1950 where Sarbacher, said some interesting comments. He said, all I know is we didn't make them, and it's pretty certain they didn't originate on Earth.
Very cool.
Some really interesting comments from some really serious scientists. I mean, he wrote some of the early textbooks on hyper and ultra high frequency engineering. So gigahertz and terahertz engineering technologies, all that stuff was being looked at and developed by this guy, back in the 60s, in the 50s even, so this is where you really are going to find some of the key stuff is going back to this end of 1947. You have, World War II ends, Manhattan Project's over, successful, so now you got all these scientists that worked for years on this goal of building this demon core for the atomic bomb, right? And they succeeded. So now you got all these scientists that, hey, what do we do with them now? Well, something crashed in the desert. Who has a security clearance to come look at this, and who has the knowledge and skill to, well, guys like John von Neumann, who wrote a paper on self-replicating automata, space probes, in 1947. In October 1947, he publishes this paper on this magical idea that he pulls out of the ether about, that advanced civilizations might send robots that could self-replicate, out into the cosmos.
For sure, dude.
I wonder where you got that idea. Could it have been, something? There.
Like maybe that's what are on some of these crafts, some robots.
Apparently, some of these materials guys, and I said the material guys that worked with this night and all stuff, claimed that it was a mesh-like fabric, when they really looked at it. So apparently someone got, SEM images of this stuff and found it like at the atomic level, it's actually like a fabric mesh,
Oh wow, I never heard that. That's cool.
I don't know. It sounded kind of weird, but then I started thinking about it. Man, imagine if you had like atomic mesh of nitinol, like strands all woven together, what that would do when because they would bend.
Yeah, I think they're trying to make like robots actuated with nitinol or something like that.
They did this
nitinol
that can't be cut. So MIT developed this material that can't be cut, right? You ever heard of this?
No.
Well, basically what happens is that it heats up super hot and it will burn out. It burns out it'll burn out the diamond blade before the diamond blade can actually, cut through it. So they do this angle grinder attack on this non-cuttable material that they developed at MIT, right? So this is just regular steel to show that,
right. It just goes right in. No problem.
And then they hit the uncuttable material, I think, at some point, maybe inside there. Yeah, they start hitting it right there. Yeah. I guess.
That's wild.
Maybe it's the door.
You remember there was a movie back in the 90s that was I think it was Flight of the Navigator. It was a movie where there was a spaceship that could change shape based on what, however it wanted to be. Just what we're talking about right here with nitinol and nitinol fabric kind of reminds me of that, right? Like
Proteus. Yeah, this is what it's called, Proteus, and these are the SEM images of how they built this material, and apparently it's just designed to just heat up and eat away at the blade, so the blade can't cut into it. And that's how it's engineered. But yeah, potentially it could be. I just always wonder how they explain that they burned out these titanium drill bits that they tried to drill into this stuff with. I mean, what's happening there at the atomic level for that to occur, especially on such a thin material, if that story is to be believed. In any case, I think that the zero tolerance machining, where you have these parts fit exactly into one another seamlessly, you can barely see the lines of where this thing comes together. But you can see them, but they're just barely there. I just think about that as the doorway that this thing opens up and closes back into, and what would be capable of on these types of craft, and then the alloys that they could use with these metallic glass technology. We're so far behind.
Aluminum.
We're so far behind them with our conventional and stuff, but you know what? We're not that far away from this, and I hate the people that say, "Oh, they're thousands of years advanced, and there's no way," and all this. It's like, no, bro, we're on the threshold right here. Like, I don't think people realize it, or maybe I'm far off. Maybe
no, I think you're pretty right on, actually. Where at least in terms of like, there's a lot of theory that's kind of being created right now that's catching up really, really fast. So I expect the next couple of years to be really interesting in this space for sure. I think we're going to see a lot of more amateur discovery, shall we say, in this space here.
Yeah, well, now that YouTube has sort of created these communities that we have here, and the merger between this sort of theoretical physics community and this backyard experimenter kind of community, where we have labs and people working on building stuff. That's going to be the real future. If we can, we've already replicated some of this stuff, attempted other stuff unsuccessfully, but if we can, build some cold fusion generators, we have a power source, right? Then it doesn't really matter our propulsion source. If we got energy and we got enough power, you know what I mean? It doesn't, like, we can figure out a propulsion system later. You know, there's a lot of people that have argued, you know, now that you've done APEC, you know, and done all the propulsion, you really should have started with free energy, like, or energy systems, you know, like, and really done, like, because once you get the energy, it doesn't really matter the propulsion. You know, you could just, if you got
Yeah,
it.
well,
That's what I said to Peter Davenport when I was 15. I was like, I think the free energy is really important, but now I think it's equally as important.
Yeah,
Or you both at
so
the same
too.
time, like Victor Schauberger did, right? His devices essentially were generated a field which not only generated a tremendous amount of energy, but also actually generated a field which would make the devices lighter and fly off. So I think you could probably do both at the same time.
Have you ever shown the Scotland 1996 making crop circles on film video?
I don't believe I have. All right, so what is it? Scotland, 1998.
It's 1996 Scotland UFOs. UFOs make crop circles in under 5 seconds. Scotland 1996.
I think I've seen this one, man.
Countryside, rational explanations aren't quite so easy to come by.
All right, let me share it so I can get.
No, not that one, not that video. Wait, let's see. I'll post the link in the private chat right here. Not that video. That video never shows it. Click on the video link. Click the video link in the private chat. No, that's not the video.
Has its own.
All right, you got. I'm gonna see the private chat. Okay. Copy link address. I don't know what happened to Sebastian, man, but hey, thanks for coming on, Sebastian. I don't know if you dropped off or if you had to go, man. Everyone, I'm gonna have Sebastian on again to go more into those models and dive into some of the math that he's been working on. It's cool stuff. Let's go check this out.
You just mute it. It's weird music.
So how the heck is that producing that? I don't get that. You know, how would you just?
I would imagine some sort of magnetic kinetic fields. I don't know, magnetism or something, but I just don't know exactly. Yeah, that's the big.
Like tractor beam kind of tech.
Yeah, it has to be some sort of tractor beam, some sort of magnetic like field or something. And somehow they're able to magnetize the crops and do that or whatever.
Yeah, and certain ones in the circles. I don't know. That still kind of boggles my mind, man. Do you think you could fake a video like that?
And officials.
I'm sure you could, but that seems pretty legit. And then they flew over it and took photos of it after the fact. Pretty sure it's legit.
Man, 20 years ago. It'd be nice if we could see something like that today, you know. Everyone's got a better camera than this in their cell phone now. You know?
Yeah. I've got another video to show you.
And
This is Billy Meyer. Who's this?
Because as I say, they're
Oh. Anyways, anyone else got any recent UFO videos for us to analyze?
I got a cool video to show you. I'm screen sharing right now.
They'll do.
Oh, wait, where'd it go? Oh, here. Are you screen sharing? Oh, okay, there we go. This is 0.25 times speed. So you can see it really well. It's going to come from the left. See that black thing?
That's totally a bug. That was like almost certainly a bee or a bug or something, man. Look at that. That's a bug.
And these things that come and like teleport in the beam are really interesting. These things that show up and like they're teleporting. These orbs.
What is that beam?
It's a high energy blue laser beam, like a burning laser.
Yeah, huh?
And these things like show up and teleport in it. They're like black, and then sometimes they would be flashing like that.
What
and here's like a
happens
flying
with
rod
dust
type.
particles? If do dust particles burn up in the beam? Could it have been like two separate?
Bugs used to like explode in the beam, but
Well, that's what I mean. Like, could it be like two different bugs flying through the beam that like are two different?
I don't know. I don't think so. I have a lot of footage of that stuff, and it seems to be like either like ionizing of the air or some exotic thing that's teleporting in it. I don't know.
Weird. Yeah, I like your Flying Dutchman, Flying Nun.
Oh, here's a little mini orb craft. See these like dual orbs? I got within like an inch of it flying. Like, you see that? Isn't that cool? It was flying for like 15 minutes, but my thing like filled up with memory right after this, after I got real close, but at least I got that little bit of footage before it cut off. Isn't that cool? It was flying under my umbrella during a light rain for like 15 or something minutes. It's really cool. I got footage of it for like 8 minutes or so. And it was just flying around like all over the place. And it was like, it seemed like it was flux pinned. The two orbs were like flux pinned together, like, you know, like a superconductor does, because it was like sticking together, but through a little levitation gap. And it was doing that for a long time. It was a really small thing, really small orbs. Here, let me get it focused. There we go. So yeah, be interesting.
I gotta find that UFO in Iraq that someone posted it to me, and I gotta find that one.
Hey, is that Lulu?
Hi, how are you guys?
Lulu Sagewari. Hey, what's up? Good, how are you?
Good. I had a question. You think telecommunication data traveling at a high speed, when we, let's say, see it at that frame, could it appear as an orb? And that's what we're seeing?
Say what?
Okay. Like telecommunication data that's being transmitted, like from, satellites to,
on wires, or you mean electromagnetic field?
Electromagnetic, like telecommunication, or anything that just,
Yeah, I've never seen it show up as an orb, but I think that's how they're flying, some electromagnetic field manipulation. I don't know.
No, I'm saying, can the data be simulated at one frame, like when you observe it, and it appears as a spherical like ball. And if you collapse the function of something, if you see it, you collapse the function of it. So therefore we can record it, and we see it in that field. And then whenever we stop, it continues on. But
yeah, I don't know about that whole collapsing of the wave function with watching things. I don't know about that. But
yeah, if you observe something, like if you observe a particle, you could collapse its function. So why not the same theory? I don't know. I felt like it makes sense, a whole lot of sense. But I mean, it's a question for whoever really knows some science. High energy beams.
But you're saying electromagnetic communication?
I'm saying, let's say right now we're all talking, right?
It's like an orb? I've never heard of that.
All right. If we're transmitting data, like the papers or research or, all that stuff. Well, if an outside observer were to look at the right time, the right thing, could our data that's being transferred from one place, from one tower to the other, be observed? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a cluster of data that's being sent, so it has to take shapes, somehow.
I think there is some way to image electromagnetic fields. I've seen it before with like Wi-Fi and stuff, but I'm not sure exactly how that stuff works.
That's a question.
Well, a lot of that would be on coax. Coax would be better because it's shielded. You have that signal wire in the middle, and you can send a lot of frequencies on that. But as far as what I'm thinking about doing, right? So you have a scale up of Mike McCulloch's idea. Yeah, you get DARPA with 1.3 million, and they're using light to build a futuristic, propulsion drive. This using Rindler Horizons as this quantum kickboard, and using trapped bouncing light around in this trapped light trapping device to sort of as this method that they want to produce propulsion and thrust with. But I think there might be
cavity thruster.
Yeah, like a cavity thruster. But I think there might be another way. And I've been following this guy Nick Vamivakis of Rochester University Institute of Optics. They do Rochester's got a big history on optics. They're the first ones to discover squeezed light back in 1985, and you can trap liquid light. Liquid light is what's called polariton condensate. So when you have light that enters a material, right, it turns into light that enters a material turns into a phonon or an exciton. Depending on if it's a mechanical vibrate, if it turns into a mechanical vibration or just an electrical vibration inside the electronic structure of the material. So if you get the right kind of material with this right electronic structure, you have this, you have a Bragg reflector and a Bragg reflector here, right? In this diagram, if I can blow this up for people, of the diagram that they use, you get a Bragg reflector and a Bragg reflector, and then in between you have this quantum well, where these this is where your polaritons and your electrons essentially sit, right, in this quantum well. And then if you bounce enough light inside this quantum well, you get strong enough fluctuations in the electromagnetic field that you actually get these production of polaritons, which is a polarization of the vacuum. We're actually, pulling apart that Wheeler-Bright process of, reaching almost that Schwinger limit of breaking that nonlinearity and producing nonlinearities in the vacuum. And if you can produce nonlinearities in the vacuum with these, it's kind of like a metamaterial, but it's also it might work for gravity. So you have a material that has a negative refractive index, which means it has a negative permeability and permittivity of free space, which means it has some remarkable optical properties. But one of those might be that it could transmute just gravity entirely, because if gravity is carried, as Mike McCulloch thinks in his theory of quantized inertia, he believes that gravity is carried by the electromagnetic field, this so-called UNRRA radiation, this UNRRA radiation bath that we sit in space, and that the horizons of things bouncing off one side but not the other is what happens between your body and the earth, which is why we gravitate toward the ship will gravitate towards the dock, and also humans will gravitate towards the center, or massive objects will gravitate towards the center of the earth. But if you're able to ride on top of this waveform, this UNRRA radiation bath, take the ship out of the water, as would happen with a metamaterial or this idea of this dynamic Casimir effect, where you have this Bragg reflector on either side, a mirror, and the cavity in between being this two-dimensional surface where you can pump tons of light energy, and it just gets stuck in between these two Bragg reflectors, these two mirrors essentially, and you can pump tons of light inside that cavity. And I think that might be a way to pump way more light than Sawyer's device, Roger Sawyer's M-Drive device. And this is an experiment that I really would like to try with this, these pumped polariton condensates, this superfluid light, and pumping enough of it in to produce the cavity resonance effect, and this essentially see if that affects gravity. See if we can pump enough light into a certain space. We might be able to create an Einstein-Rosen bridge or warp drive.
Yeah. Somehow create that critical field density to make those portals, those electron diffusion region X points show up around Earth to connect to like the sun or something, or maybe even the two fields that we could connect them. Yeah.
So another thing is this idea of that you have these polaritons all on the surface of your craft, right? So your craft becomes essentially this. It comes a condensed matter surface, which is comprised of what are called Dirac cones in physics. So you get all this. Basically, your entire surface turns into. We have this plate with this hexagonal lattice of the alignments, and inside that two-dimensional layer, you have essentially a ton of these Dirac cones or Dirac holes. The Dirac cone is both the hole and the anti-hole kind of idea.
Have you ever seen them generate any sort of like UFO type activity? I wonder how these energetic UFOs are created, like these energetic orbs.
Well, this is the whole idea. This is basic physics, right? It's basic equals MC squared. You have energy equals, your mass is produced by energy divided by the speed of light, right? So mass equals E over C squared, if you change around that equation. So if you have energy traveling in a circle, a lot of energy, you can produce mass. It's right there in the equation. So that's one approach to it. The other approach is that you have to use the Heisenberg uncertainty principle and exploit the quantum physics, right, of the situation. And that's what the squeezed light comes into play. Because when you get the squeezed coherent states, if you take these coherent states, which is you pump all this energy into your quantum well, right, and then you squeeze that in one direction, what happens is that your momentum factor spreads out. So you squeeze the position, then your momentum jumps. So you can actually, get propulsion from the quantum vacuum by squeezing.
Are there any experiments where you can create that or see that?
Yeah, I would love to set something like that up and get it done. And I think I have a couple ideas for this and how to do it. It includes ball bearings and coating them with these surfaces to, these layered, coating them with a series of layers through, either cold spray or vapor dep. Not
Chemical
sure.
vapor deposition or
Yeah, like plasma deposition.
Yeah, like how they make diamonds and stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to find the best way to do it, but you basically want to create layers on this material, and then you can pump stuff into it. You can do plasma sputtering. I've watched a couple videos, like people building these types. They build plasma sputterers in their garage, pretty cheap, man. So it's awesome that we have this community out there and people that are doing this and showing people just, hey, look, this is how you do it. You just do it. Build one of these and then start working on this stuff yourself in your own lab at home. So it's super exciting when it gets into that. And I'd love to start experimenting with these, quantum wells and these quantum physics, because what's described there with that, that picture there with the polariton condensate inside that quantum well, they have the Bragg reflector. I mean, this is or could be what we're talking about with some of these materials. The other thing is these strange metals. So when you get into this whole state, right? Condensed matter physics, you have ordered state, the quantum critical state, and then the disordered state. And this spin glasses are interesting, but these strange metals are at this quantum critical state, and they're super interesting because strange metals are topologically equivalent to extremal black holes. So if you want to create a black hole model in your laboratory, well, make a sphere out of strange metal, and you got yourself an extremal black hole that you can run a whole bunch of really cool experiments on. And maybe, just maybe, somewhere in that black hole physics is some anti-gravity technology, So there's a lot of hope for the future in science and in these fields if people want to explore and get into this. And to think that here in 2023, everyone's already invented everything, and there's no new good ideas or nothing, no crazy science revolutions or breakthrough on the horizon, man. Get with the times, because we're working on this and building models of this right now. Where excitons, photons, and phonons all meet in these lattice structures, and how to exploit some of those physics for some really remarkable new science that connects general relativity and quantum physics in ways that generations of physicists tried and failed to do.
And electrogravito-magnetism.
Right. Yes.
Electrogravitics.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that. I don't like that term because gravitics is electromagnetism. It's the radiation bath of all the frequencies. And
yeah, I agree that gravity is some sort of atomic kinetic field, like magnetism or electromagnetism at an atomic level. From attracting kinetic field.
All the math is right there on quantizedinertia.com. He's got several published papers and goes over it all in the in interview he did on APEC. It's very simple to understand. I think it's, I think the simpler the theory, I like simple theories. I don't like these really complex when you get into the strings and 11 dimensions and, reinterpreting the hop vibrations to try to come through, and you need relativists and differential geometers to solve this problem and create a UFO, and you're never going to be able to do it with the route you're going, as some scholars and other intelligent people have told me. But I think that there's more to it. I think I don't know. Only time will tell. And I've heard.
I think we need reverse engineering, honestly, because I have no idea how we would do this. I don't even know how these things work. Like,
yeah, well, if you sputter coat a sphere in the right way, you get the Bragg reflector on one side. Then you put a dielectric layer, maybe acrylic or even glass. If you could vulcanize glass onto the surface or something. And then
what do you think that's going to do? Generate some sort of thrust?
Well, when you're talking about trapping light and then squeezing it, we can do that inside one of these things. You can put it.
But what makes you think that's going to do something? Do we have any sort of a thing that flies on that or anything, or propels?
Well, I mean, you have DARPA giving $1.3 million to Mike McCulloch's lab to research this, and him posting on Twitter last year that bad news travels fast and good news has NDAs. I can't say much more than that.
Yeah. I was thinking of joining Science Bob. He's asking for my resume. I got to write up my resume soon. Work with Science Bob in the Pentagon. He got a $500 million contract for a UFO surveillance project called Hawkeye 360, using like 360 cameras, like land-based UFO surveillance. You know Science Bob McGuire? We have him on Spaced Out Radio often.
Yeah, man. So the more physics you know, the better off you're going to be on an engineering team with all this. But I mean, always go back to basics, because you can get in, deep in physics and get lost in the math and get lost down a lot of avenues that
exactly.
might not even go anywhere. I mean, you have to physics
has to be rewritten.
You just have
to work.
You just have to know, like, that dogma and our old understandings are not all rock solid. So when you can learn all that stuff, but if you don't have the power to go back and question it, then you're not really getting anywhere. And there's not a university or college in the country that doesn't teach quantum mechanics as shut up and calculate. There's no teaching quantum mechanics where you allow the students to ask deep philosophical questions about, why is this like this, and why am I doing this, and how did Erwin Schrödinger come up with his equation? There's
physical experiments,
and how does it actually relate to reality? And is there a collapse of the wave function? Or is there a pilot wave that goes forward and backward in time, like the Bohmian interpretation? So you get all these different interpretations and philosophical dilemmas in quantum physics.
I tend not to believe the collapse of the wave function thing. I think the instrumentation is just doing something to interfere with the results, but like in that one thing that what is it called, the double slit experiment. But I don't know. Who would know? I don't know. Can't really see.
The other day, I think it was Aiden that was telling me something about if you put the camera next to the double split experiment, the particle will gravitate towards the camera.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So, that was kind of, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's my favorite meme of the double slit experiment. In any case, oh my God, we've gone over 2.5 hours, man. And people are like, oh, I'm not going to watch. A lot of people, when they're new to my channel, they're like, I don't have time to do this and to watch these streams. That's why I don't get a lot of views and I don't get a lot of watches, because people just don't have the time to really do the deep dives and get into it. And then some of the times we get a little too deep and people are just like, this is not, I can't follow this. So that's good. I try to ride that line and cross it. I try to stay back on it, and if I do veer off, to get back down to some things that people can understand and basics and stuff. So yeah, I don't know, man.
The earlier image that he did the digital image, wouldn't that be called like tunneling with, from that photon being ejected out? If it's a controlled 360, and it's still ejecting it, something out, wouldn't that be kind of like tunneling through barriers? I don't know. I'm asking questions just like from what my understanding is. Like I could be wrong.
So quantum tunneling is essentially where you have two wells, they're separated by a wall, and the wave function of the particle inside one well extends enough beyond the well to reach the other well, and so that there's a probability that the particle can teleport or jump from one well to the other. And yeah, it's just I don't. Let me see. Quantum.
If you could imagine it, and you're.
Now, what happens?
It's happening. I mean,
I want to know what happened. What's going on with Deep Prasad? Has anyone heard from him lately?
No, I haven't heard from him.
He said he was going to be building a UFO on Jesse, Michael's channel. That was February. Okay, so January 19th, 2022. So this was just last year, a year ago, that this came out on Jesse Michael's channel. And he's got Deep Prasad on there, and they got Eric Weinstein on too. And diving into some of this stuff. I mean, he knows some stuff about. He goes into some interesting science too, But man, what happened to him? Last I heard, he was trying to, do some experiment. Like right here at the end is when he was talking about some experiments or something. Maybe it was this one or another one, another interview. But he was talking about that he was trying to build a company and build quantum computing, and also. Maybe we'll reach out to him and ask him for an update on what he's been going on. But I just, I see a lot of fancy clothes and watches, but I don't see a lot of experiments in science, man. And I don't, I could care less about the fancy clothes and the watches and stuff. Show me your experiments and what you're building, man. Oh, I'm not even sharing this.
I was just thinking about Deep Prasad a few days ago.
Yeah, so I'm curious what he's doing, and he's certainly good at getting a lot of attention.
We have to be.
You can join his team if you go to his website called genmat.xyz. It's his website. He's focusing on advanced materials and stuff. And you can apply to join his team. I should probably do that sometime too. I used to talk.
Yeah, I don't know what Jesse's been doing.
8 years ago on Twitter. What'd you say?
I don't know what the hell Jesse's been doing. I reached out to him and told him about everything that we're doing and what we got.
We have to be comfortable.
But I don't know what reason he's not interested. And I mean, he got drunk and painted rocks with the biggest conspiracy theorist on the internet. There's no reason he shouldn't want to talk to me. I just don't get it, man. Who did I piss off? And along the way.
Who do you want to talk to?
You didn't piss off anybody, but I just think you're more intelligent than they are, and so they fear that. I mean, it's very easy.
He's interviewing, some really crazy people. He's got Weinstein and Hal Puthoff on, Jack Valet, and I don't know. I would just someone I'd want to talk.
I've never heard of Jesse Michaels or whatever.
He's the one that did this breakthrough. I mean, this was like 11 months ago. He interviewed Eric Weinstein and Hal Puthoff, and that's where Weinstein was talking about how this whole secret college and accusing Witten and these other guys of basically throwing physics off off a cliff with string theory.
Were you supposed to be on Spaced Out Radio like last week?
Yeah, I was supposed to be, man. I lost my phone. I just got a new one, and I got to get a case for it.
I was excited for that. You should try to go back on sometime.
I'm going to reschedule
the electrogravitic stuff, like the lifters and like the digital magnetic levitation module, like this thing.
I had 2 other meetings that day that I had scheduled, and I made both of those despite not having a phone through email. And then somehow I just blanked on that interview, and I was like, "Oh wait, yesterday was Thursday," and it was I was like, "Damn it, I didn't."
What happened to your phone? Did it just stop working?
I sat on it on accident, and,
okay.
the case broke, and then when I sat on it, it crushed the whole thing, and my screen worked. So I had to order like a new replacement one.
I updated my iOS, my freaking phone just like stopped working. It was weird. It's like it got hacked or some shit.
But man, yeah, I'm gonna close this out for today, man. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone out there who watched, and we got to get back on Crypto Alchemist with Rife again and Zertis, and let me know when you guys have another show and when you guys are going live. I'd love to jump on, and anytime you see us live, man, feel free to jump on and stuff too. So,
thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you guys, and I'm gonna post the StreamYard link so people can come hang out behind the scenes with. We want to hang out and chat for a little bit. So there's the StreamYard link, and hopefully we'll see you all backstage. We can get into any questions that you have for sure.
These are like 2 buzzer magnets and a magnet I found outside, and then a neodymium like spiral on top. And it's really cool how it interacts with gravity and has like this leverage force amplification from the asymmetrical weight distribution of it. It really feels like a really strong force field, and the gravity's pulling on it strong. It's pretty cool to feel and play around with it, how it's creating this strong torque and feels like it's increasing the gravity in it when you torque it against gravity.
That's cool. I have this exercise ball that's based on conservation of angular momentum. Exercise ball, and literally it gets resistance in your wrist when you spin your wrist back and forth. And it's just like a ball it's just like a gyroscope inside of a ball that spins. I can't find anything like it online here to show the example of it, but you basically just rotate your wrist back and forth, and it keeps the ball spinning inside. Once you get it going fast enough, you can keep it spinning, but you actually feel the resistance when you move your hand back and forth, and you're actually like pushing.
Yeah, it's cool, man.
You're pushing it to go faster. It's a cool thing.
What is it called?
It's a gyroscope and some exercise. Powerball. Here we go.
Powerball.
This is it right here. Check this thing out.
Oh, cool.
I was thinking of that when you said the novelty item. I was thinking of that. I think we've had a toy.
Yeah, the gyro ball. It's a cool thing, man. So it can rotate along this axis. It's got a spinning disc inside here. So it's got this axis, and then this thing rotates along this axis. So then this axis is pinned to this other ring. It's a ring that slides around this way inside of this outer torus, right? So there's 2 points of access, and you put a string around the thing. Let me see if I can get a demonstration.
Is it magnetic?
No, it's all conservation of angular momentum, right? So it's called a DFX Powerball. Okay, so Powerball.
You ever showed Levitrons on this channel? The magnetic gyroscope Levitron?
I want to see if there's a demonstration of this ball in order. Okay. The exercise ball. Oh, this guy's jacked.
He looks like Stephen Greer.
Yes, dude. If Stephen Greer had the Powerball. I want to to see a video of this thing. So it shows you how to start it up, you know, where you put the string in it and you pull the string really quick, so it gets the thing going really fast in the middle. And then you have to just spin your hand around. You spin your hand around like that, and that sort of wobbly disc kind of motion. So that this is the type of motion. It's interesting because this is the type of motion the old UFOs used to spin with back in the day. You know,
gravity force. Yeah, cool.
You know, you used to have this UFO that would spin like, you know, you'd always see them spinning like that, right?
Yeah.
You know, well, that's the exact motion that he's doing with the hand to keep this Powerball spinning faster, to keep the momentum going in it. So this he's got a rotating thing inside there, and he's keeping it going by adding momentum to it like that. So I don't know.
Seen the Eric Lathwaite gyroscope thing where he like lifts the gyroscope up?
Isn't it like that trick with a ping pong ball and you get a cup and like you put the cup upside down and like you spin the ball, like, you know, the ping pong ball, and it just goes up into the cup, you know, while the cup is upside down? Isn't that kind of the same?
No, that's a little bit different because in that case you have the ping pong ball being stuck to the walls of the cup through centrifugal force. So you're spinning it around. So that's actually it's staying up because its downward force is being laterally projected into the sides of the walls of the cup.
Okay.
You know, so it can actually stay through that motion of it pushing off against the walls. That's a little bit different. There's a friction of it. It won't slide down, and it will stay going up. But this is like conservation of angular momentum, and I would think, like, imagine if you had like a mercury superfluid spinning around inside your UFO, and then you just have another thing that moves the UFO like this to pump that. But I think you get seasick on a ship, man. I wouldn't be able to sit there on a craft that's moving around like that. That would get old real fast.
You ever ride on the centrifugal UFO ride called the Gravitron at the fair?
Yes. Yeah, the one that sticks you to the walls. And
yeah, you rode on that, Joe.
There was one at Hershey Park too, a really cool one. There was a big one at Hershey Park down in Pennsylvania way back in the day.
Awesome.
And I just remember hearing the story about someone that puked on it.
Oh.
Because all the puke just sticks to the outside wall. It just went over everybody. I don't know. That's
a great ride.
But oh yeah, before I go, I want to play a quick song if you guys don't mind. So I wrote a new a song that I want to record here, and I want maybe we'll make a little challenge too, because I wanted people to like help me write a verse. See if we could write the last verse to this song too, because all right, here we go. Ready? I was trying to build a spaceship, but I couldn't find the parts. The government, they traced it, so I told them it was art. They said that my experiments threw detectors off the charts. And last they sent the jackals to put a bullet through my heart. Well, I was trying to build a spaceship, but I couldn't find the dough. It set my mind a racing, and I soon lost all control. But I've got it back together, now my ducks are in a row. If I could just remember all the passwords in my phone. Well, I was trying to build a spaceship, but I couldn't find the space. I was looking for a warehouse somewhere very safe, so when I crack the anti-gravity, it won't blow up in my face. And I can watch our politicians try to build a wall in space. Well, I was trying to build a spaceship, but I couldn't find the glue. I tried to find some helpers, but they didn't have a clue on how to build a spaceship or what the heck to do. They said the only one who can build this thing is you. All right.
I love it. That is awesome.
All right, guys. Have a good night. Thanks for watching.
Good night.
Good night.